All right, good evening and welcome back to another meeting of Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton. It is Wednesday, September 1, 2021. Hey, Boo. Hey, Maisha. I am so excited to be back with you all tonight. I cannot believe it's September already. This is, seems like the year, seems like January, was just yesterday. We were just, watching so many different things occur this year, and now we're already in September, just a few short months before the year is over. So this is kind of crazy that we're already seeing the end of 2021. But again, welcome back. We are at a meeting of Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton, where we talk about racial equity from a historically authentic lens. That means that history forms our perspective, it guides our responses, and it is a roadmap for us to ensure change for the present and the future. I don't know who said it, so I'm not going to tell you who, but you can Google at anywhere, and it says that those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. This is why we are very intentional about ensuring that the perspective and the information that we share with you all comes from a historical lens. And then authenticity is so very important that we come from a very real lens, so that we're ensuring that you're getting accurate information, and that information isn't, circled by or ensconced in, that it's not around, or that it's not being surrounded by, rather, whiteness. It's incredibly important that the lens that we share racial equity information from is historically authentic. So that's what you're getting when you come on a meeting of Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton. We share information and experiences from Black people primarily, because that is the voice that is the least responded to voice. It's the most notably ignored and disrespected and disregarded voice. It's the group of people in America, aside from our Indigenous brothers and sisters, who have just, have some of the most marginalized experiences. So sharing information from that perspective, because for one, you don't get to hear it enough. And then two, sharing information from that perspective helps us to correct the ism of all isms. I like to tell people that racism is the original ism. It's the original sin. It allows everything else to branch off from it. And the original racism we know is against Indigenous and Black folks. So this show is an extension of Diverse Minds Consulting, LLC. You all can find more information about Diverse Minds Consulting, LLC at www.diversemindsconsulting.com. On there, you'll find that we do consultations, we do one-on-ones, we do whole group trainings, we do cohort trainings, we do book study groups. This show right here is also, like I said, an extension of Diverse Minds Consulting, LLC. This is our free service that we offer to our community and to those around the state of Michigan, at least. And I know we've got some people down even in Georgia, in different places who listen to us. This is our free service that we offer from there. We are so committed to racial equity in our community that we offer these free talks weekly, because we want you to know, what you need to know. We want you to hear it from a historically authentic perspective, and we want you to be able to learn some things. This show does have two purposes. It's a place for Black and Brown and Indigenous folks to come and to be confirmed and affirmed in the experiences that they're having. It's a way for them to share information with the white world in a safe space for us. We are, if you've been on here for any length of time, then I'm fully committed to ensuring that Black and Brown voices are heard and respected, and that their experiences are respected. So it's a space for Black and Brown people to, like I said, share their experiences, offer suggestions and commentary. This show is also provided as a gem. It's like a jewel. It's a hidden jewel. That's why we like you to like and share these videos as often as possible for white folks. White folks and even Black folks who don't know enough about our experiences and how these things are impacting our lives every day. But as I said, it's a jewel for white folks and a gem for white folks who want to accurately understand the need for anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that should show up in their lives, what type of actions and behaviors they need to be taking and doing on a daily basis in order to ensure that they are not just in the allyship area, but that they've become co-conspirators and co-conspirators with us, sorry. But yes, so that's what the idea, or that's what the purpose of this show is for. So we encourage you to, like I said, like and share. You can donate to this show. Like I said, this is our free service. You can donate to these shows so that they can continue to offer these services every week. But yes, so that's what a meeting of diverse minds with Keisha Hamilton is all about. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. We like to get right into our conversation, so we will. And we always like to start with shared terminology. So the conversation today is going to be about white backlash, white equivocation, and white chameleons, right? But before we get into that, we're going to talk about the definitions that we share every week. I have found, it's incredibly interesting. Actually, I think I'm approaching a year with a meeting. I'm not figuring that out. I think I might even pass a year. I'm gonna have to find out, but I think a meeting of diverse minds with Keisha Hamilton has been operating for at least a year now. I'm gonna have to find that out and have a little celebration for that. So I think it's been about a year. But over this year of time of just doing this, and mind you, I've been having these conversations on racial equity for much longer than that. The definitions and the terminology and understanding what a meeting of diverse minds is, and understanding what diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism is, it's so confusing for people. And it's just surprising to me. You would think that after George Floyd, or after Martin Luther King, or Malcolm X, or the civil rights, that era occurred, that people would understand what it means to be diverse, what equity looks like, what inclusion is, what anti-racism is. You would think that, individuals would at this stage know what these things are. But I meet so many people in so many places who don't fully understand what these things are at all, don't understand their definitions at all. And so I like to continue to give that definition each week so that people can better understand. And so each time you come on, you are on the same page with me, and that you understand what those terms mean. So what are diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism? What do those things mean? I'm going to start with diversity. Diversity is simply our difference. It actually is, the difference between, someone who's tall or short, light or dark, white or black, in our skin tones, hair texture that's curly or straight, the person who you love, you may, whoever you're loving, the differences in how we love the individuals that we love and who we love, right? It's the number of children. I have 6 children. Some people have 3. That's a difference, okay? Difference is simply our difference, right? It does not only relate to our physical difference. Our physical difference is really surface level, and it really, while it does matter, it matters much less than our philosophical differences. How we think, why we think, how we reason, why we reason, and the decisions that we make based off of how we think, and how that thinking was formed, how that reasoning was formed. A meeting of diverse minds with Keisha Hamilton seeks to tap into that difference in my audience, in our audience, so that we can understand why we think the way we do, and then begin to shift in the way that we think. I like to be very clear that we are shifting from, a mentality and a society that fully accepts and normalizes whiteness as the norm. So, tall, light-skinned women, white women, with straight hair, for many years, that was the norm. They were always the heroines in all the stories. They were the princesses in all the books. Disney just started having Princess Tiana and different ones. Recently, Princess, I don't know if they call Princess Moana or not, but, just recently started offering other visuals of diverse characters. For so long, all the princesses were white, and that was the norm. The norm in America had been, one husband, a wife, and 2 kids, a dog, and a picket fence. Well, diverse families that come from diverse communities, we like 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 kids, you know what I'm saying? But in society, because the norm was just, a husband, wife, and 2 kids, we all had to compare ourselves to that. So a meeting with diverse minds seeks to get at changing the norm that you're considering that it should be. So many people think that, well, it's not fixed, it works well for me. Yes, because you're white, it works well for you. This world was designed that you might work and that it might work well for you. It's also designed so that, a mom with 6 kids in an organization, organizations having a problem with her needing to take off time to take her 5th or 6th child to the doctor, because our policies and our practices that we have are designed around those 2 kids units, you know what I mean? So our policies and practices in our organization says, you know, families should be 1 and 2 kids. So after you take your 1 or 2 kids to the doctor, you know, we give you enough time, enough sick time, enough time to get off work for whatever purpose and reason for your 2 kids. Well, then when you have 6 kids that you need to take time off for, you're busting the seams of their policy. Something's wrong with you. You know, you shouldn't be taking this much time off. You know, you shouldn't need because we weren't designed to include anybody else but this white mentality, right? So diversity seeks to, like I said, not only acknowledge our physical differences, but those differences that are in our mind that reflect and impact how we make decisions, why we think how we think, and why we do what we do, right? So diversity is, it seeks to, we want to acknowledge and think about more so, how are you and why are you thinking the way you're thinking, and why are you doing what you're doing? What makes you think that way? And we know that, again, on a meeting with our responsible Keisha Hamilton, because we like to be historically authentic, we are seeking to change this normalization of whiteness into one of inclusiveness. We want all family sizes to be included. So when you're, as me, you know, an employee going to my employer and needing to take off extra time for my 5th or 6th child who needs to go to the doctor now because some sickness is running through my family, because we as a society have decided to normalize big families that come from diverse communities, now they're not having problems. Again, we're not there yet, but this is why we have these shows. And this is why I'm you know, suspecting that you watch these shows. So what is inclusion? Inclusion is simply having let's go to equity first. Equity is not equality. I like to say that because it's an easy way to explain it. Equal means that, you know, you cut a pie in 6 pieces and 6 individuals get 1 piece of the pie, regardless to what each of those individuals already have. So let's say you have 6 people and you have a pie that you've cut into 6 pieces, and 4 of those people already have a full pie from someplace else. Equality says, regardless to what you have, I'm giving everybody a piece of this pie. That's equality. That is not equity. Equity says we have 6 people, 4 of them already have a full pie. That means we're going to cut this pie in half, or we're going to cut it in thirds, or however we're going to cut it, and we're going to divvy it up between these 2 people who actually need the pie. You know, and I know who says you ever need a pie, but you know, I would say we always need different things, just in moderation, right? Anyways, though, so equity is ensuring that you recognize the barriers that exist in a person's life, and that you then give them whatever it is that they need in order to succeed. So as I mentioned already, I have 6 children. My oldest child is 19. My youngest is 8. My oldest child needs certain things from me, like I mentioned before, conversations about, you know, buying houses, moving out of state, you know, purchasing a vehicle, credit. Those are the conversations that I'm having with her because that's what she needs at this time in her life. My youngest child, she's 8 years old. Her biggest need sometimes, and not even really a need, but a large want for her, is she likes to sleep with me at night. She doesn't get to very often because she's wild. But in that, if I try to offer my oldest child, who's 19, that she can sleep with me at night when she's wanting to have conversations about credit and buying a house and purchasing, you know, a car and whatever, I'm not going to be giving her her need. On the flip side, if I'm talking to my 8-year-old about, you know, purchasing a car and credit, I'm not fulfilling her need. I'm not helping her out, right? I'm not providing her what she needs to be successful in whatever it is. And this is a crude example, but it fits to equality. Parents should understand, and even, you know, more easily understand equity in the sense that none of your children are alike. You know what I mean? I have children who have matured at different ages and stages. I have 4 teenagers right now, a preteen, and then my 8-year-old. Different of my children who have needed different things at different stages. So, I have to have different conversations with them. They all may have to have the same conversation, but at different times in their life, I have to give each of them what they need at that moment in their life. You know what I mean? I can't say, well, your sister or brother needed this at this time, therefore you need it as well. We live in a society that seeks to be equal in everything that it does. It says, it's working for me, it ought to work for you. And that's a very colonized way of thinking. For one, because we set our society up for it to work only for white individuals. And then 2, because it's one size fit all, it just doesn't work. nowhere does it work. No relationship is the same. No husband and wife, no, person who you love, no mother, daughter, no father, nothing that we do in life is the same. Even our hair textures, skin tones, nothing is the same. And we all often need different things in order to be successful. So when we're talking about equity, it should be very clear and easy for us to understand that when I'm looking at your life, if you're saying that, another example that I always gave a lot of times was that you have two people who need transportation. One person says, I need a car. The other person says, I need a bike. We give them, equality would say, I'm giving each of you all $5,000 to fulfill your needs. Equity would say, I'm giving the person who needs a bike $10,000, and I'm giving the person who needs a car $10,000, and the person who needs a bike, I'm going to give you $2,000. Equality, it's also a bad steward of money. Let's go back to our other example about those pies in the beginning. We have 6 people who need pies. 6 people who are here. We have, 4 of them who already have a full pie in their hand. And the inequality, we have to give everybody a piece of that one piece of that pie that we just cut into 6 pieces. Well, that's overkill for those 4 people who already have pie. Now you're just giving them excess. That's exactly what, and it's the same thing with the 2 people who need vehicles. If you're giving a person who needs a bike, $10,000 for his bike because you gave the person who needs a car $10,000 for his car, you've given him way too much money. What is he doing with the excess? Why wouldn't we be good stewards of our money and ensure that the person who needs, the car, that they get fully what they need? This is the thing too. While I've just said that, the bike and the car, because we gave you 10,000, we got to give you 10,000. Our society just does not work like that. We are not this place where, separate but equal. It does not exist in America. Now, we know way back in the day, late 1800s, early 1900s or something like that, we had these, things come out separate but equal. It's never, ever been separate but equal. It wasn't then, it's not now, and it won't be in the future, okay? The reason why I definitely won't be in the future is because we designed our society in such a way that, in order to catch up, you can't be equal. It just can't be. And equity is not equal. Equity is not equal. Equity says, you have this, I'm going to give you what you need, whatever else you need. And if that looks different than what this person needs, if that means that this person is getting much more than you, then that's just what's going to have to happen, because that's just what they need to succeed. Okay, I can spend a lot of time on equity. I want you to know that equity is the key to everything. It's the thread that pulls diversity, equity, and inclusion together. It is everything. If you don't have equity, if you're not personalizing your responses to DEI and to anti-racism in your organizations, in your businesses, in your churches, in your personal responses to the different things that are going on, then you're not getting it right. Equity is personalization. It's making sure that each individual person has what they need to succeed. Okay. And you cannot do that if you're trying to reach equality. There is no such thing as separate but equal. There just isn't. Not in our society. Okay. Okay. Let's go on to inclusion. What is inclusion? Because I can spend time on, equity. So what is inclusion? Inclusion is ensuring that those who are marginally excluded from spaces of decision making, that they are not only at the table of decision making, but that they have a voice big enough and a perspective big enough that's heard, and then that is incorporated into whatever is being created. We'll go back to my example about the policies that we have in our organizations. So in our organizations, we have policies that are designed around whiteness. Okay, the idea that you have a mom, a dad, and 2 kids, and likely grandparents who are helping the mom and the dad with their grandkids, these 2 kids. And so mom doesn't need to take as much time off work because sometimes husband can, sometimes, grandparents will take them, you know what I mean? And so the policies, the sick policy is designed around that. You only need, 40 hours, 30 hours of sick leave, for a year. Because again, dad sometimes taking them and grandparents taking them. Well, then you have in the organization, as mentioned before, someone like myself who has 6 children and who's actually single. I'm a divorced woman, who comes in and has to, come in with, hey, Angie, who comes in and needs more time because she has to take her 4th or 5th child. And if you're not big families, you don't come from big families, and it might be hard to understand that when one kid gets sick in the house, then usually all the rest of them get sick together. When we got COVID back in February of this year, everybody in my whole house got COVID together. We all got it. There, this whole idea that, you need to socially distance and like, where they do that at? not in our homes. Not because we don't want to, but oftentimes we just can't. Just, you know, anyway, so we all got it, right? So in that, we all got it at the same time. And I got 6 kids I got to take care of, plus Keisha, but 6 kids I got to take care of. So the policy just didn't fit us, right? It didn't fit us. In those inclusion tables, when you are ensuring that there's true inclusion, you're ensuring that people with big families are sitting at that table, and that when they tell you, I need more time than this person with 2 families, like it boggles my mind, because I had this conversation at a former employer, not my current one, thank God, but it does boggle my mind how anybody sitting behind the desk in a decision-making position, you know, listening to an employee who doesn't have that power, that was me, say to them, I have 6 children and I need more time for them because they're sick. And I've got to take my child. I mean, my 5th child matters as much as my 1st and 2nd child. And I need to take them to the doctor as well. And that employer, you know, just they're not willing to budge on the fact that you need to adjust this policy so that I can have what my family needs. So often, your organizations, because you've designed your systems in such a way and because they work for you, you're not often to make those changes. But true inclusion is ensuring that all voices are at the table, that grandparents who work in your organization, that they're at the table. That, and I'm just giving this example around, you know, this right now, but you can apply it to different areas, that dads are at the tables. You know what I mean? We have some single dads who take care of their kids, you know what I mean? That dads are at the tables, that aunts and uncles are at the tables, that families that have very small you know, units, and the families that have very large units, that all them at the table, so that when we are creating our policies and our practices, all of that difference, all of that diversity is included in that policy. Our policies can also be, should also be equitable. We can have policies that say, you know, you have 1 child, and so therefore you get, you know, this many hours off. You have 6 children, and therefore you get this many hours off. That we're going to allot that many. We can actually have that. Now I know that, you know, we've got all these, you know, rules and things that America has created primarily to restrict and constrict the movements of Black and brown individuals. And because of that, we have, you know, those things bleed out into other, you know, into other communities, right? We can change that though. Just because it isn't doesn't mean it can't, right? Okay, just because it hasn't been doesn't mean it can't. Just because it hasn't been doesn't mean it can't. And this is why we talk about these things on a meeting of Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton, because we need to change these things, right? Okay, because I can go forever on that, and I do have other stuff to talk about. I'm gonna keep going. What is racism? So racism is simply, did I just say simply? It's not simple, people, to be clear, okay? Racism, it is the marginalization and the oppression of people of color, primarily Black and Indigenous, originally Black and Indigenous. And then of course it, you know, branched out into other groups of people as racism changed. It's a social construction. That means that somebody somewhere at some time said, you know, in order to create a difference and a categorization of these groups of people, we're gonna say that these people that look like this are Black, you know, and therefore they're no good. And Black means bad and not human and whatever else they came up with. Racism also is coupled with this, you know, this social construction of categorization, this marginalization, this oppression of this group of people. It's coupled with power. So you often will hear different individuals say, because they're uninformed, that, you know, Black folks can be racist as well. I'm going to be very clear with you. Black and brown and Indigenous folks, and I got all 3 categories. Black, brown, and Indigenous folks are never racist. They can be discriminatory, because racism and discriminatory are the same up until they're not. And they're not at the point of power, okay? Racism and discrimination are the same up until they're not, and they're not at the point of power, okay? Racism is coupled with power. What that means is that racism, that coupling with power is in our legal, it's legalized in our codes. It's in our laws. It's why cops can kill Black and brown individuals all day, every day, and not be held accountable. It's why when a black cop kills a white woman, goes to prison for many, many years. It's why when a white cop kills, black and brown people, they don't. We have, George Floyd was one of the first cops ever to be convicted of killing a black man as an officer, because our laws say that it is okay for white individuals to harm black individuals without getting in trouble for that, without being held accountable to that. Now, if the conversation was on that tonight, that topic, then we'd have more conversation on it, but it's not. But Google can be your best friend. Just look through Google anywhere you want, and you can learn a lot about police brutality, mass incarceration. You got to understand statistics, and you don't have to know everything about it, but you do need to have a working knowledge of what statistics mean, because so often we will have white people who will say, well, I also experienced that. And while that experience is valid, it matters, and it should be addressed. However, it needs to be addressed. What we can never do is talk about racism based off of one experience of one person, or even two or three people. Racism affects whole groups of people. Okay, and so that's the difference between it. We talked a lot about racism. Please go to some of my other shows, because I have some more stuff I want to talk about tonight. But again, it's the marginalization, the oppression, it's the social construction, it's categorization coupled with power is what racism is. Again, it's similar to discrimination, but at the point of power is when it separates, and power relates to how racism is written into our laws and legislation, and how it comes out. So what is anti-racism? Anti-racism is just the active and intentional working to dismantle and to destroy and oppose racism. So an anti-racist, and that's who we hope everybody in the world will become one day. And that's not so far off. We all can actually be that way. Anti-racism is working actively against it. Now, clearly, you've got to know what racism is, how it shows up, how it plays out in order to work actively against it. It is possible to do that. Sorry, I'm getting a glare and it's kind of irritating me. Okay. Anyways, though, so that's what anti-racism is. Again, we hope that everybody in the world eventually becomes an anti-racist, right? Okay, let's get to the topic of tonight. And please feel free to put comments in there, because I really want to hear from you all tonight, if at all possible. Okay. White backlash, equivocation, and chameleon. I'm going to define those because, I don't like to do anything without definitions. I feel like that's the only way we can have decent conversations when we're on the same page. These definitions are Googleable. You can Google them and, find them your own self right now if you want to ensure that you're getting the right one. So what is backlash? Now, clearly, this show is a racial equity show. We're talking historically authentic conversations based on, racial equity. So racial equity, historical authentic conversations, right? So all this stuff is about race, okay? So we're talking about white backlash, white equivocation, and white chameleons, right? What is backlash? Backlash is a strong and adverse reaction by a large number of people, especially to a social or political development. So one of the easiest examples of that would be the January 6th, 2021 insurrection, when a bunch of pro-Trump supporters stormed our Capitol. 5 people died as a result of that. Many more, well, I think, all that were being attacked were definitely traumatized. There was fear that our vice president at the time would be hanged. There was just a lot going on with that. It was, really crazy. But that backlash, that white backlash, is a strong and adverse reaction by a large number of people, especially to social or political development, right? So we know that the political development at that time, at the surface, is what they were saying was that, the election results were incorrect, and they were going to save their democracy when we all, anybody who knows anything about racial equity and the issues and social injustice in our community, in our country, that our country was fighting against just this change and shift that is occurring in it at this time. We have these changes and shifts every once in a while and out throughout society and throughout history. And I'll let you look that kind of stuff up. I do love history, so I study that kind of stuff, but I'm gonna let you look that up your own stuff. But anyways, so that was one of the most, nowadays famous examples of backlash. Backlash, please feel free to put some of your examples of what backlash is in the comments if you want to. It's also meetings, individuals who are in meetings that talk about, because all these organizations, and I'm a training specialist, and so I get to be in different communities, in different spaces. I do a lot of this work in, I volunteer, I'm in my city, so I see this kind of stuff everywhere I go. You'll have individuals in meetings who disengage from the conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion. They pull away, they turn their screens off. Sometimes they're caught on the hot mic, asking, what's the purpose of this? Why are we doing it? I don't see any reason for this type of thing, this information. It's white backlash. It's a strong and adverse reaction by a large group of people. We're creating laws, and I'm sorry, not we, white backlash is creating laws to restrict voting access all across the South. And I think we had some up north as well, but that's called white backlash. When Stacey Abrams, during Biden's, campaign and run with Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, they were running, she lost her campaign to, a lot of corruption in that situation. But then she said, okay, since we have to do it like this, and I'm going to go and I'm going to register, help get, hundreds and thousands of people registered in the state of Georgia. And by her actions and the things that she did, they turned the state of Georgia blue for the first time in a very long time. As a result of that, because at the time voting access was more accessible, as a result of that, white backlash said, oh, since you're going to figure out a way to get around our systems of our corrupt system by getting people to vote and, helping them to sign up and, having them stand in these long lines and wait until, and stay there, even though the polls are supposedly closed, so we can't push them out because they're standing in line. You're going to figure out a way to get them to vote. We're going to figure out a way to get them where we restrict voting even more. So they closed hundreds and thousands of, I'm gonna say hundreds of polls, not only in Georgia, because this is all across the South that this is going on. We're gonna close these polls down so that, and in the spaces that we're gonna close them down, these in Black and brown communities, we're gonna close a lot of these polls down so that these individuals have to travel very far to vote. Now, we know that a lot of times Black and brown individuals are in jobs where they're on second shift, where they have to be there, there's not a lot of flexibility in how they do their jobs. They're going to white supervisors who are often cruel as well in their judgment of them. We always get judged more harshly. And so they've said, we're going to restrict all these things so that, you got to decide between going to work or voting. Going to work or getting going to vote and getting a mark on your, record that leads you towards losing your job. We're going to make it where you got to travel out of town. Oftentimes, Black and brown individuals struggle with your vehicle issues because we're a poorer community by design. This is by design that we're a poorer community. So that's white backlash. It says, oh, you're trying to make some changes here. We're going to ensure that we make it more difficult, harder for you so that you can't make those changes. It looks like, this is so interesting to me. It looks like, old people. And when I say old, I mean, grandparents and these people, when I say grandparents, they're grandparents to students who are like 30. So these are not students, right? These are, the grandparents that are showing up to these meetings, these school board meetings. They're about, 75 years old. They're coming in there with these long letters that they've typed up to read and let the school know that we don't want you to teach on CRT, critical race theory. I definitely think the voter suppression is considered white backlash. And hopefully, Tremaine, that made sense with Stacey Abrams, how because of what she did, the backlash that came as a result of that. But let's have more conversation on that. Please feel free to keep adding to that, Tremaine. But so again, it looks like, these individuals who are coming, now it doesn't matter the age of the individual. I don't want you to think that because they're old and 75 years old coming to these meetings to talk about critical race theory, that something is wrong with them because of their age. That's not the issue. It is interesting that individuals who have absolutely nothing to do with the school system have no vested interest, you come out, 10 and 20 deep to talk about an issue that, one, you don't fully understand, two, that you've decided what it means without accepting from those who created it what it means, and then want to have a long conversation with school boards about how they shouldn't do it, also not taking into consideration that it's not even taught in K through 12 elementary. So that's what white backlash looks like. Because it's this backlash to after George Floyd died, you'll notice that all these organizations said we have to understand what DEI is. We've got to understand what diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, we got to understand what this is. And so white folks said, we don't want our students knowing about Ruby Bridges and what she went through to become a student, when she went to integrate educational systems. That's white backlash. Them deciding that, oh, this is the way it's going. I'm gonna fix that by coming in and changing it with my anger, with my hatred, with my whatever else they're doing. It's a lot of things. What else is white backlash? It's intentionally confusing the conversation, the discussions and topics around systems change. Oh my goodness. This looks like, and I have this as well. Let me go back. Let me go to one more. Micromanaging Black and brown employees when white people can't have their way. That's another one. Okay. So it's intentionally confusing the conversation around issues of systems change. It's that intentional disruption and confusion. It's also micromanaging Black and brown individuals. Now, like I said, on this show, I really want Black and, it's for Black and brown people to understand, for you that this is a safe space for you. And sharing your experiences. It's so crazy. I'm out in different spaces. Like I said, I'm doing this work all the time. When I'm talking to my Black folks, we all have we all share the same experiences. It's with different individuals, but it's the same experience. Something good happened to me on my job, and then my supervisor or manager or someone else who, felt like, nope, that shouldn't happen to you. So I'm going to make your job harder, make your life harder. And it comes with micromanaging. It comes with, this confusion. It comes with, these, what's the assignments when they just give you a lot of paperwork? Just assignments, just a busy work, right? It's so incredible how all of these things are historical. And that's another reason why we talk about historically authentic information on here, because this is not new. These responses of white backlash and how they play out, they're not new. When we talk about, okay, so that's another one. Anyways, like I said, so the backlash again, it's the resistance of white folks in any form when we're talking about racial equity. So we're talking, and the thing when it comes to backlash, which is going to lead us right into the next term, is equivocate and chameleon, both of those terms. When we're talking about backlash and white folks, fighting back against it, they don't want you to fully know that that's what they're doing. That's not, it's this whole thing, for me, it's confusing. You're in a, cop here is being filmed, on camera, and his whole world changes because he's being filmed. I don't understand why anybody has a problem with being filmed when you're in a public space, and you're a public servant. Like, what's the problem? What are you afraid of? What about your actions and behavior that don't you want publicized? What is there that you don't? But for some unknown reason, like I said, whiteness, okay, and whiteness is not only in it's not only in white folks. White folks are not the only ones who operate in whiteness, to be clear, okay? Black, brown, indigenous individuals can and do operate in whiteness. It's a culture, okay? Whiteness is its own culture, okay? So to be clear, I'm not just speaking to white people only, I'm speaking to whiteness, okay? So whiteness, for some reason, one of its biggest fears is being shown, which is confusing. Like if you know you're wrong, your actions and behaviors or thought processes. And this is why I sometimes struggle with individuals who act confused, because at the point of camera, now they don't want to be filmed. And that's another conversation. We'll have it, some other time, but it's interesting. Let's go on to equivocate, okay? What does it mean to equivocate? It is using ambiguous language, so unclear language, so as to conceal the truth or to avoid committing one's self. White equivocation. The using unclear or ambiguous language so as to conceal the truth or to avoid committing oneself. Makes sense. I've had many white people ask for my thoughts on critical race theory. They felt it wasn't necessary, and they don't, because for one, they don't understand it, and it's not impacting them, and so therefore it doesn't matter. And that's such a sad way for an individual to live life, but society has designed it where, because it's not impacting me, why do I care? And it shouldn't be that way. We're all interdependent and interconnected individuals, but whiteness as its culture, because it's not being impacted negatively, it doesn't care about what other impacts are occurring to other folks as a result of its culture. So equivocate, using unclear language so as to conceal the truth or to avoid committing oneself. What does that look like? It looks like long emails, texts, posts. These are usually white women who are on, Facebook, Instagram, and different places, who are trying to explain why and how they are accurate, or how their perspective even matters in the conversation of racial equity. Okay, the message that they're giving is usually unclear. It seemingly is in agreement, but because of the length of their responses and because they never get to because they never reach a place of saying I'm in agreement, you're confused by it. Like, what are you trying to say? Because they hide what they really feel with a bunch of terminology. This can be your emails. This can be your bosses. Men do this so humans, right? Humans do this. Whiteness does this. It likes to hide who it really is, what it really feels and thinks in unclear messages. So that you are like, okay, what do you agree with me or don't you? I mean, do I agree with you or don't I? What are you trying to say? This isn't just a social media thing. Like I said, it is popular on social media. You'll see lots of, I just be like, are you done yet? Like, we got another email, like, really? Another post? But yes, because whiteness doesn't want to be recognized as whiteness. Like I like to say, say it with your chest. If that's what you feel and you think, then say it with your whole chest. Don't hide it in all these extra spaces that are unclear. Just say it. Like, I don't agree with you. Okay, I can work with that. As opposed to equivocation, and that is using unclear language to confuse what you're saying. It looks like your supervisor, your employer, your manager, who says something good. So they'll say, something that's good, but you, because of the relationship you have with them, because of the experiences that you've had with them, because of the tone of voice that they use, that something's off about what they just said. They tried to make it like they really agreed with what was going on, but something wasn't quite right about what they said. Black and brown folks, and we don't talk about this enough, but we, sometimes we should. Yes, beating around the bush. That definitely can be pat, because they don't want to be, it's the purposeful, ambiguity, the purposeful unclearness to when sharing stuff, information, what I mean? It's just that it's unclear, and primarily because, individuals whiteness doesn't want to be found out about who and what it really is. It hides and thrives in private spaces in different ways. So like I said, Black and brown folks, one of the things that we excel at as Black and brown individuals, because we've had to, is in reading individuals. We go off of your facial expression, the way your eyes are moving. We go off of your body language. We go off of your tone of voice. Whiteness is very good at, lifting its voice up to sound very pleasant. And Black and brown individuals are very quickly able to acknowledge and recognize that you don't mean what you're saying. You don't mean what you're saying. You don't mean how you're, like, something's not right there. We just have it like that. You'll ask almost any Black person or brown person. And you'll find that we are very good at recognizing it, something that's not real, something that's disingenuous. We recognize that. Okay, and it's the back and forth language. When asked about a policy or something else, I sit in a few policy making spaces. So, I have an opportunity to experience this often. It's the telling individuals one thing in front of everybody else, and then coming back later and saying something completely different. And then when questioned about what they said earlier, saying, oh, you must not have heard me. That's gaslighting as well. You must not have heard me, or, oh no, I meant it like this. Or, it's just this whole, oh no, this is the same thing as that, except it looks like all this confusion and ambiguity, this unclear, it hides itself in that. Whiteness does. Okay, let's talk about a chameleon. This one is really interesting. So we know that chameleons are these animals who, change their color based on, and sometimes they look like they can change their texture, but they don't. It just, the color changes, and the image looks so similar to where they are that they can hide in these spaces, right? So a chameleon, in the definition from Google, is a person who changes their opinions or behaviors according to the situation. Okay. Now, I don't see my Black folks chiming in a whole lot, and that's okay. But I'm sure that each of you all have had an occasion where, a white person and a whiteness and person generally is acting one way with you, usually around the Black people they work, they're one way, and then one way in a different group. So again, because I sit in these racial equity spaces a lot, I have, opportunity to watch individuals sit at one table and be very much for and supportive of racial equity and changing how things are done, seemingly resourceful and, just very helpful, seemingly to be just all in, you know what I mean? They're supposedly doing their homework, they're reading books, they're, on the road to anti-racism and to accomplice status and co-conspirator status with, Black and brown folks. And then, in the opposite realm, the same exact person at a different table, usually when those Black and brown people who they were supposedly supportive of are not in the room, then they are, actively making decisions and actively speaking in ways that are very racist in nature. Okay. It's the chameleon effect of white people and whiteness. It's at one space is saying, I am for it. And then at the other space, by their actions, their decision making. And again, it's very important that we acknowledge that not just Black and not just white people specifically can act like chameleons. Whiteness acts like chameleons. Okay. So that can be a Black person who's teaching on racism and anti-racism and diversity, equity, inclusion in one space. And yet when they come into another space, and even sometimes in the same space, they make a decision or, a comment or something that impacts other people that totally contradicts them saying, this is who I am in this space. You know what I mean? So it's that DEI person, teaching on this subject matter, supposedly having a working knowledge of it and understanding the historical nature of it, and then coming to a different table and working at, intentionally against all that stuff, for whatever reason, because they have all their reasons, they be having their reasons. Whiteness is not, it never lacks on, making its excuses, saying things like, well, we know policy doesn't really change behavior. Okay, that's a lie, or, saying things like, well, we all have unconscious bias. True, we do. We don't have to accept your unconscious bias. We actually can help you change from that by requiring that you change from that. But because of whatever, like all these different reasons and things that people come up with to, keep, to remain as chameleons, they do, you know what I mean? So we just have to, call it out so that you can know what it is. And so that you can know, what, am I doing this? Am I, having these conversations in one space. And then when I come out of that space, not practicing what I'm preaching. Am I doing that? Am I this chameleon who's showing up in one space as one person? And then when I go to this other space, a very racist space, a very white supremacist space, am I in that space becoming that person? Now, hypocrisy, which can be considered, like a chameleon, hypocrisy is not new to, especially a Christian, a nation that calls itself Christian. Hypocrisy is not new. That term isn't new. So the idea that a person would show up in one space as one thing and then come to another space and totally contradict that first space should not be new to us. And it's not. What I think, I'm not gonna say what I think. What white individuals don't realize is that even though they don't like for Black and brown folks to get together and have these conversations, and they don't know how the connections work as far as us having these conversations, we generally, one, without a conversation, know that something's not quite right with you. And then two, we do conversate with each other. And so we tell each other, hey, I know that they're working, that they seem to be working good for you, but they didn't do right by me. Now, there is a disclaimer here with that. While we are on this road to racial equity, while we're trying to learn all these things and do better, become these better people, we're going to make mistakes, okay? You're going to make mistakes. You're going to offend a Black person, maybe in this space and not in that one, because you've grown from this space to that one, okay? What should always remain true for anybody operating in whiteness who's trying to come up out of that is that your authentic and thorough apology to first person that you offended, it should happen. It should occur, right? So it's not just, I offended all these Black people over there and I'm going on to this space and I've changed my way. Like, no, we don't, if you don't fix what you messed up, you're not going on. You're just changing your shape and your color in a different space. Because if you don't fix it, then you're going to keep on doing the same thing in different spaces, okay? And it'll be like the conversation I had with one individual on my page a few months back, where they said, I've been in this space for 40 years and I've realized that I can't make Black people happy. Well, what it is that you just are not humble enough. You're not, humble enough to make sure that your actions and behavior are accurate. It's not that Black and brown folks are, just these difficult people that, won't be satisfied, no, it's not that. We just see your bull often and we call it out. And then when you say, well, I'm gonna leave this space because it's gotten too hot, I'm gonna go over here and link up with these Black folks. And then you do the same thing over there. You're not fixing you. And that's the issue. It's not that you've been called out and that, you can't be in these spaces. It's just you're not fixing you. There's the next thing we're going to talk about, calling out and calling in. For white folks, again, until you commit to authentic conversation and authentic correction, without backlash, of yourself, of your actions, your behaviors, then you can't expect to go into other spaces and not repeat the same thing and then not also be called out or called in that space as well. That's going to happen, and it's not these spaces that are the problem. It's this commitment to whiteness that you have and to not changing that is the actual issue. So it does hurt, okay? To my white people, I like to tell people, like I said, historically authentic conversations. Anytime we are looking to change who we are fundamentally, that inside person that we are, that can be difficult. It can be distressful at times because it's like, I've been this way all my life and I can't believe that I've been causing this kind of harm. That can be painful, okay? It takes humility. It takes a person who's saying, you know what, all that I've known, regardless to how it, how I think it may have whatever done for me or my family, now that I'm looking at it through the correct racial equity lens, I see how it has caused extreme harm to others. And I'm going to wear these lenses and correct all those things as far as in my behavior and moving forward, right? Unless you've been, causing harm and you need to correct it as well. But, it takes humility. And not a lot of whiteness is not humble, Okay, it's not been taught to be humble. It's not been taught to, it's this whole, only the strong survive, and the competition, and I matter more than your family. That whole philosophy that has been taught, it doesn't teach you to be humble. It just doesn't. It doesn't teach you that the next person matters just as much as you. It doesn't teach you that. So learning that stuff takes a lot of humility. Accepting that stuff, those ideologies, takes a lot of humility. And most white folks just they're not ready to do that kind of work, sadly. Some are, and so a lot of them are the ones who watch the Meeting of Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton. Some have not found it yet, and so that's why they're not watching. So there are people out there. We do this work because we believe that these conversations help us to get to those spaces. And we believe that as long as you're living and you're breathing, that there's hope for you. We actually do. Now, we always have our boundaries, but we do believe that, and that's why we have this conversation. What we offer these free services on Wednesdays, because we believe that there's hope for our community and for our world. But it does take work. It does take work for white folks to, go through that shift, to stop being a chameleon, to be the same person in every space they're in, to not equivocate, not cover up and be ambiguous in their language in every space that they're in, to not have backlash when they don't get their way. And that happens it happens all day, every day. You'll have people who are retiring and who are, moving on from different jobs, not because, and Black folks, we have to do things in a certain way in order to survive. So they're leaving, this job, and might not tell you that it's because of ... but because we have to survive some kind of way. So we can't tell you why we're really leaving. And white folks will have this idea that, they really, we sent them off, they ran and fled from your organization, and they couldn't tell you that because you're not who you say you are. You're a chameleon. So for Black folks, I think part of our job is, for those of us that want to, because if you're just waking up every day and going to work and living your life, and that's the most that you want to do, then, I say more power to you. Live it how you want to live it. But those of us who choose to work in these types of spaces, it is our job to call those things out. It is our job to kind of turn a mirror and say, hey, look, this is what's being seen. This is what you're showing me. This is what you're showing me. Now, I can't say for sure that this is who you are, but I do know that this is what you're showing me. And I need you to change who you're showing me if you want me to believe something different about you. It's incredibly interesting how so many people in our society, we are the society that says basically, believe what I say, not what I do. Like, where they do that at? But in many spaces, they do that. Believe what I say, not what I do. I seem like I am frozen in one space, but I'm a guess that it's going to keep going. Anyway, so again, we have the responsibility, those of us who choose to call it out. We should be clear that mistakes in race, the quest for racial equity, they're going to happen. We're going to have some mistakes when it comes to racial equity, people who are trying to reach that space, and we allow for that as long as you correct it and move on. But this world, it doesn't become a safer place for Black and brown individuals to exist in until we are willing to not, offer backlash to Black and brown individuals, until we are willing to, not be chameleons, until we are willing to mean what we say and say what we mean when we're talking, until we are, being the same person in this space and that one, until we are doing that, until whiteness is correcting those things, this world is unsafe for Black and brown individuals. Okay, thank you all so much for joining another Meeting of Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton on Wednesday, September 1. I'm trying to keep my conversations at just about an hour or a little less, and I think today we are right about there. I appreciate you for joining me for a white backlash, equivocation, and chameleon. Hopefully you'll choose to like and share these videos with your family members and your friends. Feel free to check out my website, Diverse Minds Consulting. That's www.diversemindsconsulting. That's minds with an S, mindsconsulting.com. Like I said, at the beginning of the video, we talked about all the different things that we offer on there. Feel free to donate to a Meeting of Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton, these Wednesday shows. These are our free shows. We know that they are valuable to you. We've heard from many of you. We were thankful over the weekend. We got to go to the Summerfest and meet up with a few different people who mentioned that they watched these shows. It was very pleasant to hear from them. Hopefully you're joining still, even tonight. But yes, as mentioned, you can donate to the show. This is our free, what Diverse Minds Consulting offers as its free service to the community, because we believe in what we do. We believe that this is, beneficial to the community. We've had people watching from a few different states, and we know that this information is helpful, because a lot of what you're getting in DEI, it is not historically authentic, and you're getting that from here. So we appreciate you for joining us. We will see you next week, Wednesday, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.